There is a hidden side of gardening that most people never see, does not show up in beginner guides. It is rarely talked about in simple tutorials, and yet it destroys more gardens than pests or bad weather ever could. Most people believe that if a plant has water, sunlight, and good soil, it will grow. That sounds logical, that sounds correct, but it is not the full truth, because in the natural world, plants are not always friendly. They compete, they dominate, they defend their space, and sometimes they attack, not with visible force, not with movement, but in ways that are silent, invisible, and incredibly effectively. Is the reason why many gardens look healthy on the surface: green leaves, standing stems, no obvious damage, but something feels wrong. Is slow yields are low, plants never reach their full potential, and no matter what you change, nothing improves. This is where most people get frustrated. They add more fertilizer, they increase watering day, move plants into better sunlight, but the real problem is still there, hidden in plain sight, growing right next to the plant. The truth is simple: some plants should never be grown together, because when they are, they begin to harm each other in ways that are almost impossible to notice until it is too late. This concept is known as companion planting. But what most people do not realize is that companion planting has a dark side. There are combinations that help each other grow stronger, and there are combinations that slowly destroy each other. Today, you are going to understand that hidden side, and once you see it, you will never plant the same way again. Let us start with one of the most common mistakes: tomatoes and potatoes. At first, this combination seems harmless. They belong to the same family. They grow in similar conditions. They even look like they should be perfect companions. This is exactly why people plant them together. But this is where the problem begins. Tomatoes and potatoes share the same diseases. One of the most dangerous is blight. When one plant gets infected, the other becomes an easy target. The disease spreads faster, the damage becomes more severe, and instead of losing one plant, you risk losing both. Now, imagine an entire garden where these two are planted side by side. A single infection can move through the soil and air, destroying everything in its path. This is not bad luck. This is a predictable outcome, yet most people never realize it. They see the damage and blame weather or watering, but the real cause was the pairing itself. Now, let us move to a plant that is even more dangerous. Fennel is not just another herb, it is one of the most aggressive plants you can grow. What makes fennel different is something called allelopathitis. Means it releases chemicals into the soil, chemicals that directly affects the growth of nearby plants. These chemicals interfere with root development. They slow down nutrient absorption. They weaken surrounding plants without any visible sign of attack. So, what happens? You plant fennel in your garden, everything looks normal, but the plants around it start growing slower. They look smaller, weaker, less productive, and no matter how much you care for them, they never improve. That is because the damage is happening underground at a level you cannot see. Fennel does not compete, it dominates. This is why experienced gardeners keep fennel isolated far away from other crops, because once it is placed in the wrong spot, it quietly affects everything around it. Now, let us talk about something that spreads rather than poisons. Mint is often seen as a simple, harmless herb. It smells fresh, it grows fast, it looks beautiful, but this is exactly what makes it dangerous. Mint does not stay where you plant. It spreads through underground runners. These runners move silently beneath the soil, expanding in every direction, taking over space, absorbing nutrients, crowding out other plants. At first, you may not notice everything still looks organized, but below the surface, mint is expanding them. Slowly it begins to take control. Other plants start to struggle. They lose access to nutrients. Their roots face constant competition, and over time they weaken. By the time you realize what is happening, mint has already spread too far. Removing it becomes difficult, sometimes nearly impossible, without disturbing the entire garden. This is why mint should always be grown in containers, controlled, isolated, contained, because once it escapes, it does not stop. Another dangerous combination involves onions and beans. Onions release compounds that can interfere with the growth of beans. Beans rely on beneficial bacteria in the soil to fix nitrogen. This process is essential for their growth, but onions disrupt this relationship. They affect the bacteria, they reduce nitrogen fixation, and as a result, beans struggle to grow properly. The plants may survive, but they never reach their full potential. This is a perfect example of hidden interference. There is no visible attack, no obvious damage, just reduced growth, and most people never connect the cause. Now let us Look at carrots and dill. This is a combination that confuses many gardeners. Dill, in its mature stage, can negatively affect carrots. It can stunt their growth, halt their development, and reduce overall yield. Interestingly, young dill can sometimes coexist. As it matures, the interaction changes. This makes it even more dangerous, because the problem does not appear immediately, develops over time, which makes it harder to identify. Another important example is cabbage and strawberries. Cabbage belongs to a group of plants that are heavy feeders. They absorb large amounts of nutrients from the soil. Strawberries also require a rich nutrient supply when planted together. They compete intensely. The result is poor growth for both smaller fruits, weaker plants. Productivity. This is not because they attack each other directly, but because they compete at the same level and neither one wins. Now, consider sunflowers. Sunflowers are known for their beauty or bright impressive, but they also release chemicals into the soil. These chemicals can inhibit the growth of nearby plants. Just like fennel, they create a zone where other plants struggle. This is why placing sunflowers randomly in a garden can lead to unexpected problems. They may look harmless, but their effect on surrounding plants can be significant. So what is really happening here? Why do plants behave this way? The answer lies in survival. In nature, every plant is trying to secure resources: water, nutrients, sunlight, space. Some plants compete directly, use chemical strategies, some spread aggressively, others block the growth of neighbors. These are not accidents, these are evolved survival mechanisms. And when we ignore them in gardening, we create problems for ourselves. The most dangerous part of all this is that these interactions are silent. There is no warning sign, no clear signal, no immediate damage. Everything looks fine, and if it is not, this delay creates confusion. It leads to wrong decisions. People try to fix the symptoms instead of the cause. They add more water, more fertilizer, more care. But the real issue remains plant compatibility. Now imagine changing this approach. Instead of randomly placing plants, you design your garden based on compatibility. You separate harmful combinations, you group supportive plants together. Suddenly, everything changes. Growth improves, plants become stronger, yields increase, and gardening becomes easier, not harder. Understanding what not to plant together is just as important as knowing what to plant, because prevention is always easier than correction. Once damage begins, it is difficult to reverse, but when you avoid the problem from the start, everything works in your favor. So the next time you plan your garden, do not just think about sunlight and water. Think about relationships, think about interactions, think about what is happening below the surface, because sometimes the biggest threat to your plants is not something you can sit, is something growing right beside them. And once you understand this, you stop guessing, you stop struggling, and you start growing plants the way they were meant to grow: strong, healthy, and fully alive.